As you can imagine, and as you've heard about from me on a number of occasions, Haitian culture is very different than American culture. Daily life, how time is spent, is immensely different than how we do life and how we spend time here in America. I remember one time I was talking to a friend of mine in Haiti. I said, "Hey, we got that thing on that day." He says, I can't do that day. I said, "Why can't you do that day?" He says, "It's laundry day." That's laundry day. I thought, yeah, that's laundry day. What do you mean it's laundry day? Are you telling me it's going to take you all day to do your laundry? Let me teach you a really, really hard Creole word. His response, oui. Yes, laundry day. Let me walk you through laundry day. Well, no indoor plumbing in Haiti. So the first thing you got to do is go get your water, right? You got to go get it. And you may live close to the pump. You may not live close to the pump. If you live close to a river, you can wash your clothes there. Most people, though, they got to walk to the pump. So you got to get up. You got to collect all your tubs. You got to go to the pump. You got to wait in line. I hate Disney World. And it's not Disney World that I hate, right? I hate standing in line on the sun. That's what I dislike. You got to wait in line because everybody needs water today. You finally get to the pump, you pump your water, you take it back to the house. Is it time to wash? Not yet. You got to boil the water first. Notice how I pronounce boil? You like that? Okay. You got to boil the water first because that water's not clean. You shouldn't be washing your clothes in that water. You got to purify that water. So you got to, listen, how are you going to boil that water? You going to put it on the stovetop? You're not going to put it on the stovetop because you don't have electricity or gas running to your house. So what you're going to do, you're going to light some wood, right? How are you going to get the wood? Well, you got to go cut it down, right? You got to make charcoal out of it. Hopefully you've done that before you're ready to boil your water. You got to light the fire. You got to heat it up. You got to boil it. You boil the water. The water's done. And now you've got to hand wash every piece of clothes in that tub. Hand wash. Then you got to wring out every piece of clothes. And then you've got to find a spot where you can go and lay out. There's no like laundry lines. What they do in Haiti is they put them on bushes, right? You lay them on the bushes and they get sun and they dry. Hopefully before the sun goes down. Laundry day. What does our laundry look like? I wonder what it looks like for us the cold weather's coming. Aren't you happy about that? Hey, go turn the heat up. Well, we don't got to go chop down a tree, collect wood, and throw it in a furnace, do we? You just walk over to that little thing on the wall and you just go beep, beep, beep. Some of y'all don't got to walk to the wall. You just pull this thing out. Some of y'all fix your temperature of your house before you get home, right? Haitians have a saying. They say, every American we've ever met has a watch, but nobody's got time. It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. We have more time-saving devices in our lives, and we are more busy and hurried and have less time than ever in the history of human civilization. That's a problem. That's a problem, right? Last week we talked about money. We've heard about money this morning. Why do we give back to God? We give back to God because God needs our money. No. We give back to God as a spiritual discipline. It's a reminder that everything we have comes from Him. And when it's over, everything we have goes back to Him, right? And when God commands us to do stuff, it's for our good. So when he says, look, I want you to tithe, it's not because he's trying to harm us. It's not because he's trying to make us less comfortable in our lives. It's because he knows that we have a tendency as fallen beings to put our trust in that green stuff. He says, look, in order to fight back the tendency to trust your money over me, I want you to, on a regular basis, give it back to me. Just to remind you repeatedly, it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to him, and my life is in his hands. This is not only true of money. We don't just make a regular habit of giving back to God as a reminder that everything comes from him and everything will go back to him. Therefore, we don't need to be enslaved to it. The same is true of our time, right? Not only does our money belong to him, I've talked about this a lot. It's all his. Our lives belong to him. Our time belongs to him. And so what do? As a reminder that it comes from him and ultimately it's going to go back to him, we give it back. So that we don't fall into the slavery of thinking that my life is defined by a list of achievements, by a golf score, by how devout of a fan of a football team that I've been, by a number of awards, a number of certificates for education. We are so busy so as to store up for ourselves this wealth to define us. This wealth of achievements. That's not where our identity lies. Our identity lies in him, right? Think with me for just a moment about Genesis 1 and the creation. First time we hear of the Sabbath, right? The first time we hear about something being made holy, set apart, consecrated in the Bible is time. God on day one, you remember we've talked about this. What does God create on day one? Come on, give it to me. Light. And then what does he do? He separates between the light and the darkness. In day two, what does he create? The firmament. And he separates. He puts a boundary in place between the waters above and the waters below. And what does he create on day three? He creates dry land. He draws a boundary between the wet and the dry. What does he create on day four? The sun, the moon, and stars to create a boundary for our calendars. What does he create on day five? The birds and the fish, and finally humans. Notice the pattern. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. And the whole point is that this thing is teeming with life. Boundaries are required for life to thrive, right? They're absolutely necessary. Without boundaries, we die in chaos, and our culture and our families and our kids are dying in chaos with no boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary says, you can't come in. Can't come in. What is a boundary? A boundary is no. Right? That's what a boundary is. Why on the Sabbath, on the seventh day, it says God rested. Like, wait a minute, God doesn't have to rest. God is eternal. He doesn't need rest. No, if you translate it the right way, it doesn't say he rested, it says he stopped. He stopped. And he says, I want you to stop in the same way that I stop, to remind you that you have limitations. And if you try to do it all, you are going to burn yourself out in a world of boundaryless chaos. Sabbath. Rest. Stop. It's not just stopping activity and work, it's stopping worry. It's stopping anxiety. You know what I love about the gospel story? There's so many good things about the gospel. Oh, man. Jesus does loads of wonderfully great works. And I sometimes, Lord, if I could have been there to witness this one miracle, Which one would I pick? I think I would have liked to see Peter walk on water. Because I just can't imagine how that, like the logistic, and like how miraculous. It also would have been cool to see him rebuke the storm. Listen, some of us, I'm included, this is above all else, this sermon is pointed right at me. This is probably the area in my life where I fail the greatest, where we've created a storm and a flurry of unending, boundaryless busyness, and God is trying to rebuke the storm and calm it, and we're telling him not to. No, I like it like this. It's all I know. He rebukes the storm. He sleeps. And of all the wonderful miracles, and we can ask this question, not just which ones do we like the most. I know for some it's the water and the wine thing. You've heard the joke, you've seen it on the internet. Jesus and the disciples go out to dinner, and the waiter comes to the table and says, "What would you all like to drink?" And Jesus goes, "Water." Which of them are most important of the miracles? Well, that's easy. That's easy. The easiest miracle is the resurrection. That's it. And guess what? He did it while everybody was asleep. That makes me want to rest more, to leave room for God to do his best work. When I take my hands off and stop and lay a boundary down and say, no, I think that's where his best work is. We have limits. We are not God. We cannot make a name for ourselves. We are so hurried. I want to read. This is a book I want everyone to read. The Bible first, above all else. But if you've got some additional time in your calendar, and you better after this sermon, this is called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. Who here has heard of this book? Okay, get this book as soon as you can. In this book is based off of the premise that we are not just supposed to obey Jesus, we are supposed to adapt his lifestyle. And Jesus was not a hurried, busy person. And in fact, the great antithesis to the deepening of God's work in our lives is our distracted busyness. We are so hurried and so busy and so distracted that God can't do a work inside of our lives. Let me read this. I have said so many times as I turn here, I don't have time. I don't have time. This is so good. We simply can't see, read, watch, taste, drink, experience, be, or do it all. Not an option. Life is a series of choices. Every yes is 1,000 no's. Every activity we give our time to is 1,000 other activities we can't give our time to because, we can't be in two places at once. We have to learn to say no constantly. As Anne Lamott so humorously pointed out, no is a complete sentence. And it's one we need to work on into our vocabulary. In the language of Henry David Thoreau, we have to, quote, live deliberately. Just finished reading his famous memoir, Walden, about going into the woods for 2 full years to slow down and simplify. Take a look at this line. He writes this: I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Do you ever catch yourself with the sneaking suspicion that you wake up on your deathbed with this nagging sense that somehow, in all the hurry and busyness and frenetic activity, you missed the most important thing? Hello, Martha. Martha, stop. Do what Mary's doing. Somehow, here we go, you started a business, but ended a marriage. You got your kids their dream colleges, but you never taught them the way of Jesus. You got letters after your name, but learned the hard way that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. You made a lot of money, but you never grew rich in the things that matter most, which ironically are not things at all. You watched all 14 seasons of fill in the blank, but never learned to love prayer. This is the terrifying aspect of the conversation of our time. This is wild. Listen to this. Most of us, not all of us, there are exceptions here. I know Charlie takes a good 4-hour nap every day. And here's the thing, we laugh at that, don't we? You know, somebody once paid attention to the people who made such a great difference throughout history. Think people like Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin, not just political guys, but other religious leaders. They said, what is 2 things that they always did? They took a long walk every day and they took a long nap every day. That's interesting. Here we go. Copious amounts of time we waste. For all the talk and hurry and overload, most of all, it's self-inflicted. Philip Zimbardo's recent research it's called The Demise of Guys. It's the crisis of masculinity in Western culture. This is going to hit you. Has concluded that the average guy spends 10,000 hours playing video games by age 21. Listen. My mind jumps to the research around this rule. In 10,000 hours, you could master any craft or become an expert in any field, from Sumerian archaeology to Olympic water polo. You could get your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. You could memorize the entire New Testament. Or you could beat level 4 on Call of Duty. How do we spend our time? It's how we spend our lives, and it's who we become. I'm almost done. Apparently, I'm known as a reader, says the author. I read 2 or 3 books a week, which normally comes in at around 125 books a year. How many? 125. I feel pretty good about that. At least I did until I read Charles Chu's calculations. The average American reads 200 to 400 words per minute. I read about 5,000 words a minute. I'm kidding. I know I read fast. That's all I'm saying. At that speed, we could all read 200 books a year. Nearly twice my quota in just 417 hours. Sounds like a lot, right? 417? That's a little bit more than an hour a day. But you can guess how much time the average American spends. All right, now you're going, I don't play Call of Duty. How much time the average American spends on social media? Pull your toes in. Each year, the number is 705 hours. Let's add TV to that. 2,735 and a half hours. Meaning, for just a fraction of the time we give to social media and television, we can all become avid readers to the nth degree. The simple truth is, behind reading a lot of books, it's not that hard. We have all the time we need. The scary part, the part we all ignore, is that we're too addicted and weak and distracted to do what's most important. If this is true of reading, listen, I just substituted the time with reading, right? How much more is it true of our lives with God? What else could we give 1,000 of hours of our year to? Now, again, you put those numbers together, TV and social media, you're talking about well over 3,000 hours a year. In 20 minutes of Candy Crush on our morning bus ride, we could pray for every single one of our friends and family members. In an hour of TV before bed, we could read through the entire Bible in 6 months. In a day running errands and shopping for crap, we don't really need. I had one of the youth come up and says, my mom says I'm not allowed to say crap, but you said crap from the pulpit, so I can say it now. Sorry. In a day running errands shopping for stuff we really don't need, we could practice Sabbath, an entire 7th of our lives devoted to rest, worship, and the celebration of our journey with God. You see what I'm getting at? Long before Thoreau went off into the woods, Paul said this, and then he quotes our passage. Look carefully about how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. The next to the last phrase can be translated in a few ways. Every day is a chance, every hour an opportunity, every moment a precious gift. We are so busy and we are so distracted that we really are running the risk of going through our entire lives missing the whole point. We need to slow down. We need to slow down. How do we do it? We adopt Jesus' lifestyle. Solitude, get time alone. And when I say time alone, I don't mean time alone with your phone and your iPad. It's not what I'm talking about, because that's not alone, right? Solitude, silence, silence. Another one is simplicity, all S's, like a good Baptist preacher. We've got so much going on in our lives. We got to simplify it, right? Jesus was busy, but he was busy only doing the things that God asked him to do and nothing else, right? We've already talked about Sabbath and resting. Here's one that really, really is hard for me. So silence, solitude, simplicity, Sabbath, slowness. Slowness. All right, here's a test. He says this in the book. Here's how you practice slowness. You're coming up to a red light, and there's one line that's this long. There's another line that he says, get in this one over here. I'm the guy that's like weaving in and out, shifting from sides, trying to get as close as I possibly can. I don't get on the shoulder unless I got my hazard lights on. Hazard lights in Jackson mean you're an emergency response vehicle. You can do whatever you want. I'm learning. Go to the grocery store, get in the longest line at checkout. Now, here's your slowness. Slow down. Slow down. This is, all right, slowness. You go, okay, I'll get in the longest line at the grocery store. I'll get in the longest line at the red light. When I find myself being anxious and hurrying, it's interesting. Of all the things I've preached, and however long we've been together, this might be the most challenging thing I've ever put in front of you. Put this away. That's scary that that's the most challenging things I've ever put in front. And you're going, I don't need to because I'm not addicted to it. Prove me wrong. Prove it. Prove it to yourself that you're not addicted to it. Put your phone to bed at night. You know what I mean by that? Put it down and don't get it until tomorrow morning. These things, we got to have honest conversation about these things. And there's all sorts of other things connected to these things that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on. These things are the tail wagging the dog. We've got to put this thing down. I think we need to get back to a lifestyle that matches Jesus' lifestyle. We're in a storm, we're in a boat, we're anxious because we've created it for ourselves, because we're addicted to the constant input. Try an hour a day. Try putting it down for an hour a day. That's my challenge to you. Okay, our time is upon us. We need to slow down. We need to simplify. We need to Sabbath. We need to acknowledge our limits. And we need to give our time back to God as trusting that it ultimately comes from him and it will return to him, and that his wisdom is enough to guide us in how we should spend our time. Let's stop wasting time.